Massachusetts jury on that felony charge of strangulation and a misdemeanor charge of assault and battery. Here's the moment now that verdict was read. Watch this.
On count one, strangulation or suffocation, what is your verdict? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On count two, the charge of assault and battery, what is your verdict? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Remember, this case was brought against him by his former chef, who claimed that Diggs slapped and choked her during an argument. Diggs' attorneys say it never happened. Misty Maris has been following this one for us. This was a pretty quick trial, I think. The jury only deliberated a few hours here. Are you surprised by the verdict, or does it track what you thought, what tea leaves you read?
Yeah, I'm not surprised by the verdict because Adams, the alleged victim in this case, had a really tough time on cross-examination, Hallie. This case was all about timeline. This alleged altercation happened on December 2nd. It wasn't reported until December 16th. The defense was able to effectively present witnesses that said that they did not see anything, that there was no indication that this altercation happened. They were able to use video of the alleged victim on December 9th, right in between that time, having fun on a trip in New York. Basically, they were really able to attack credibility and say that these allegations were a part of a scheme to try and elicit money. And that credibility attack really was effective by the defense. So I'm not surprised to see this. Remember, no other evidence was at play. This was largely based on Adams and her testimony alone. So it was really whether or not the jury believed her side of the story.
When the verdict came in, the jury's message was clear. They didn't buy the story. Stephen Diggs was found not guilty on all charges, and the accuser's account simply did not survive contact with the courtroom. This case had everything that keeps people watching. A high-profile NFL player with his career and freedom hanging in the balance, a dramatic accusation, disputes over unpaid wages, and allegations that ultimately fell apart once the evidence, or lack of it, was laid out in front of a jury. The accuser, Mila Adams, alleged that Stephen Diggs had physically assaulted her back in December of 2025. But the defense dismantled that narrative piece by piece. They pointed to the complete absence of physical evidence and brought attention to the fact that her legal team had reportedly been seeking a $5.5 million settlement before this ever went to trial. Then came the witness testimony. Members of Stephen's own staff, people who were around and saw Mila Adams in the days following the alleged incident, took the stand and stated they observed no visible injuries, no marks, no scratches, nothing that lined up with the picture her side was painting. The jury heard all of it and came back with a verdict that said one thing: not guilty across the board.
Stopping off in New York for a couple of days. I asked her what she was going to stay. She said a hotel. I'm like, girl, we friends. You don't have to stay at a hotel. You can stay at my place.
All right. Did you actually see her that night? Did she stay at your place?
Yeah.
So did you end up seeing Miss Adams? Did she actually get in your car?
Yeah.
You picked her up from LaGuardia Airport? When she got in your car, did you notice anything out of the ordinary?
Mm-mm.
Did you notice anything about her appearance?
No.
Was there any bruising on her at that point?
No.
They even showed the jury videos of her dancing and socializing with them a week after the alleged incident.
And that was just one piece of the defense's case. By the time everything was laid out, it became increasingly clear to the jury that this situation had less to do with seeking justice and more to do with seeking a payout. The credibility issue stacked up fast, and the overall picture that emerged pointed heavily toward a financial motive rather than a genuine claim of assault. It all started, according to her own account, over a pay dispute. She was working as his live-in private chef at $2,000 per week with an exclusive arrangement. No other clients, full availability, working solely for him. That was the agreement. Then one week, Diggs told her to leave the house because he had company coming over, guests he didn't want her around for. She flew out of town, stayed elsewhere for the week, and when she returned, she came back expecting her full weekly payment. Her position was straightforward. She didn't ask for the time off. He sent her away, so she was still owed her salary. Diggs disagreed and refused to pay her for that week. That dispute escalated into a heated back and forth over text messages, with both of them in separate sections of the house. According to her version of events, something she sent in those messages set him off, and he came into her room demanding to know what she said, and that, she claimed, is when the assault occurred. But when she took the stand, things unraveled quickly. Her testimony couldn't hold up under cross-examination. The jury didn't believe the assault happened, and part of the reason came down to a basic physical detail. She claimed he slapped her on the right side of her face using his right hand.
He smacked
He
you.
smacked me with an open hand.
Do you know which hand he used?
Right hand, right side of my
Do you
face.
know which part of your face got hit?
The right side of my face.
And then what happened?
And then he... Can I have a second? Can I have a second?
Yes, you can.
The jury took issue with her account for a reason that came down to basic physics. If someone is standing directly in front of you and strikes you with their right hand, the natural point of impact would typically land on the left side of your face, not the right. The defense attorney zeroed in on that detail specifically to suggest her story had been constructed rather than lived. And in a case where there are only two people in the room when the alleged incident takes place, that kind of inconsistency carries real weight. With no witnesses, no physical evidence, and a story that couldn't hold up to basic scrutiny, even small contradictions are enough to plant reasonable doubt in a juror's mind. That's all the defense needed. But the physical detail wasn't the only problem. The jury also caught her in a separate inconsistency regarding the money itself. She had been telling Stefan Diggs that he owed her 3 weeks of unpaid salary. The evidence showed he had already paid her for 2 of those 3 weeks. The 1 week he was withholding was specifically the week he had sent her away from the house, the week he believed he had no obligation to pay for since he was the one who told her to leave. So the dispute that supposedly triggered the entire incident wasn't even as large as she presented it to be, and that gap between what she claimed and what the records actually showed did not help her case in front of the jury.
Adams, you had gotten paid for 2 of the 3 weeks that you said you hadn't gotten paid for, right?
This is missing a whole lot of stuff.
It's a yes or no question.
I can't answer your question correctly without the proper evidence.
Your Honor, may I approach? You may. Do you recognize this document as text exchanges between you and Sonny?
Yes.
Dated December 9, 2025?
Yes.
And you're the person in the bubbles on the left?
Yes.
And you write to Sonny, hey, so I looked over my transfers, payment history, and they sent payments 11/7 and 11/21 totaling $4,000. See that?
Yes.
So you knew that you had actually been paid for 2 of those 3 weeks that you tried to get paid for again, right?
What's your name? I never got your name.
Did you know
I
that
don't
you
know.
had
I was trying to address you by your name because I'm not this. I don't know. I can't answer that question correctly.
And that's the part that really tells the full story. Behind the scenes, she wasn't just pursuing that one disputed week. She was claiming 3 weeks of unpaid wages, despite already having received payment for 2 of them. That detail right there is what shifts the entire situation from a legitimate workplace dispute into something that looks a lot more calculated. If the real grievance was that one unpaid week, there was a straightforward path. Take it to civil court and make the argument. That's a defensible position. But claiming you were denied 3 weeks of pay when the records clearly show you were paid for 2 of them? That's not an exaggeration. That's a provable misrepresentation. And that kind of detail can completely reframe how everyone in that courtroom views everything else you've said. That's exactly how credibility starts to collapse. Once one inconsistency gets exposed and documented, jurors don't just adjust their view of that one point. They start reconsidering every other claim on the table. Nothing gets the benefit of the doubt after that. And in this case, It wasn't just her word against his. There were payment records. There were text messages. There was a documented paper trail that directly contradicted her version of events. She couldn't walk any of it back once it was in front of the jury. What could have been a small claims dispute over a single week of pay somehow escalated into something far larger when an attorney got involved. And in court, it came out that her legal team had sent a demand to Stefan Diggs for $5.5 million to settle the case. Think about that for a second. The conversation went from $2,000 to $5.5 million. That jump alone tells you everything you need to know about where this was always headed.
Demanded $5.5 million from Mr. Diggs, didn't he?
Mr. Diggs offered me $100,000
Ma'am?
to recant my statement.
That is a yes.
That is the
Your Honor,
only...
May we be heard to sidebar, please? Objection, move to strike. Ms. Adams, 3 weeks ago, your lawyer demanded $5.5 million from Stefan Diggs, correct?
That is client lawyer privilege. I cannot speak on that.
You believe that your lawyer's communications to Stefan Diggs are covered by your attorney-client privilege, ma'am?
I can't answer that question. I don't know the answer to that question.
And honestly, her attorney bears a significant part of the responsibility for how this all played out. The legal strategy was never really about winning in court. The plan appeared to be straightforward: apply enough pressure to make Stefan Diggs uncomfortable enough to write a check and make it all disappear quietly. That's what a multi-million-dollar demand letter is designed to do. It's leverage, not litigation. The problem is that when the other side doesn't fold and the case actually goes to trial, that strategy falls apart completely, and it takes the client down with it. What the trial also ended up revealing was a much broader picture of the environment surrounding Diggs at the time. According to details that came out during the proceedings, he had a significant number of women in his orbit on a regular basis, some in personal roles, some in professional ones, and in several cases both. Among them was a hair braider who had worked closely with people connected to his personal life, including styling members of Cardi B's household. The fact that she was simultaneously involved with Diggs while working that closely with people around him added another layer of complexity to an already messy situation. The trial also surfaced details about multiple women employed in various capacities at his residence, painting a picture of a household with a lot of moving parts and overlapping personal dynamics. As for the accuser specifically, what emerged was a portrait of someone who had built her lifestyle around that arrangement: $2,000 a week, access to an NFL player's world, attending games, living well. By most accounts, she had not saved or planned for life beyond that setup. When the relationship soured and she found herself being pushed out, it appears she convinced herself, or was convinced by others, that the situation was worth far more than a single disputed paycheck. The dream, reportedly, was that this would all eventually lead to Diggs investing in a restaurant for her. When that future didn't materialize, a $2,000 grievance somehow became a $5.5 million lawsuit. The jury saw through it. The criminal case destroyed whatever credibility remained, and at that point the civil pursuit became nearly impossible to take seriously. The verdict sent a clear message. The story didn't hold up, the evidence wasn't there, and the whole thing read as a situation that got weaponized the moment it stopped working in her favor. Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's get the conversation going.